Welcome to Take Up Space. Catalyze your creative cosmic fire. We are living in a time of profound planetary healing, and the world needs conscious and engaged women to step up and embody our full feminine wisdom. Even as divisions and crises point to the intensity of collective evolutionary forces at play, we get to honor and deepen our connection to the divine feminine. For it is by tending to and resourcing our connection to the sacred and to the cosmos that we heal, thrive, and flourish together. It's time to express your full radiance and beauty and take your place by taking up space. I'm your host for this event, Irene Chong, and today I'm excited to present Heather Ensworth, who will be sharing more on how our creative inner fire is being activated astrologically. Heather, welcome back. It is always such a delight to be in your presence and to have this conversation with you. So let's just dive right in. And my first question to you is, what does reclaiming your divine feminine expression mean to you? And what was the biggest breakthrough or lesson that you learned?
Thank you, Irene. It's great to be back with you again and to be part of one of your summits. I really so admire you and the work that you're doing. And that question is a really deep and profound question. I really have been on my own quest to reclaim that sacred feminine wisdom probably since I was 28, when I went through a very intense spiritual crisis and started to realize how the Christian religion that I'd been brought up in had such a strong patriarchal energy to it, and began to see the ways in which my own creativity and feminine energy and wisdom were being constricted in some of the patterns in conventional reality and the way in which our cultures are structured. So I really set on a path to reclaim that sacred feminine wisdom and energy, and went through a lot of lessons on the way, both in terms of how to reweave that balance within myself. But I think one of the most painful lessons I went through was realizing, because I was in a lot of women's circles, I facilitated a lot of women's circles over the years, and part of what I realized is how much we women can internalize that suppression of the sacred feminine and then take out that frustration on each other. And part of what I've really had to learn is, how do we heal that within ourselves so that we can actively support each other in reclaiming that sacred feminine energy and emanating it into the world to help the healing of the planet in this critical time.
That was such a beautiful share, because already I'm starting to see some of the themes emerging that's going to come forth in our conversation today. The first piece around the Christian religion and your experience of how, it was steeped in a very patriarchal kind of dogma. And it's interesting because today I know that in our conversation you would like to speak to Neptune's transition, its move into Aries. And that strikes me as quite an interesting one, because Neptune, it relates so well to, spirituality, not necessarily religious institutions, but the core essence of spirituality. So it sounds like, a huge part of your journey in the reclamation of the divine feminine was in recognizing that there are all these feminine wounds steeped in the religious tradition that you're familiar with, that you were brought up in. And you were starting to see some of that in the women's circles that you were part of, some of which you were facilitating as well. So this is really interesting. At this point you made about how if we don't heal some of the woundings and trauma that we have experienced and we internalize it, then we reenact it in our relationships, sometimes the most intimate relationships with other women. And that actually leads me to my second question. The fact that you have felt it was really important to speak to this piece around, creative inner fire. My sense is that a lot of women have a lot of creativity inside of themselves that they are not bringing into full expression, either due to woundings, limiting beliefs around, oh, they're small, they don't know enough, etc. But that this then becomes projected or expressed in very unhealthy ways. And therefore, I know a huge part of your work is to support people in healing their trauma and wounds. So why do you think it is especially important in the times that we're living in now for more and more people, women especially, to step up and heal those wounds so that they can embody and express their creative inner fire?
There's so much in what you're saying there, Irene. I mean, I do think that we as women in this period of patriarchy have really felt that suppression of our true selves and capacity, excuse me, to be in our full creative expression. And I know that one of the lineage wounds in my own history was coming from a mother who was very intelligent and very creative, and a grandmother who was highly intelligent and had all these visions and dreams of what she wanted to do. But they, within the constructs of their lives and the belief systems they grew up in, there was no chance to express that. And I felt and experienced their frustration and anger in not being able to be in their full creative expression. And I think that as we're coming out of the Kali Yuga, we have been in this time of descending consciousness where we've been in this patriarchal period now for 4,000 to 5,000 years. That is where the wisdom of the sacred feminine gets suppressed. And we as women feel that and experience that in our own personal ways. But that Kali Yuga ended in March of 2025, March 20th. And it was shortly after that that Neptune moved into Aries. And I believe that that is calling us back into reclaiming the sacred feminine wisdom to heal, to come back into balance. We're doing that personally. We're doing that collectively to be able to move into the higher consciousness and into these new paradigms of the Aquarian age. But I think it's very significant. We think of Aries as this sign ruled by Mars. We think of it as carrying that energy of Mars and the sacred masculine. But I love that the meaning of the Sabian symbol for that first degree of Aries, 0 degrees of Aries, is the image of a woman rising out of the sea, and a seal rises up and embraces her. That is such a powerful image that speaks to the way in which, as Neptune moved into Aries, it's about moving into new forms. Neptune is about creativity. It's about remembering that mystical part of ourselves, our intuition, our right-brained ways of being. But I think that image is so powerful of the rise of the sacred feminine out of the depths of the sea, and the way in which it is when we reclaim that sacred feminine wisdom, we come back into connection, communion with nature, with the sacredness of the life around us. We come back into balance within ourselves and in the world. And I think that's the time that we're in right now. This is such a powerful time of the resurgence of sacred feminine energy and wisdom, and a resurgence of creativity.
What an evocative image. I'm reminded of the Selkie, that myth. It's so interesting. And then because we have Neptune, a transpersonal planet who also, represents the sea, right? Neptune and that trident. I wonder if you could say a little bit more when you felt and when you tuned into this Sabian symbol. What were some of the inspirational messages that you received?
It really is so powerful because the sea is our source on the earth. And it's so much about the sacred feminine rising out of the sea, and the sea holding the wisdom of our earth. And I do believe that seals and whales are holding a higher frequency, are guiding us as humanity into remembering who we truly are and our experience here on the planet. Remember that prior to the Kali Yuga, we were primarily right brain dominant as humans. And in the age that preceded our movement into patriarchy, the age of Taurus, which was about 4000 to 2000 BCE, that was a time of honoring the sacredness of all of the life around us and a time of honoring creative expression. In the age of Taurus, there was no war. It was all about honoring beauty, creative expression, pottery, art, that remembrance that we each have those creative fires within us that we can express in our own unique ways. And it's been in the patriarchal period that we start to devalue the creative expression in music or art, or all of the ways in which we can let our creative fires manifest, and got caught in left brain ways of thinking, which becomes more about analytical, linear thinking and stepping back from that intuitive, creative, right brain way of being.
Beautiful. And, I think this is why, as you were sharing, I keep coming back to that Sabian symbol, because the way they work, number one, it was really an intuitive download that the creator had when they came up with these Sabian symbols. But the other is they speak through images, right? Through symbol and metaphor. And it's really rich because each of us can interpret it differently, right? Based on our own personal intuitive ways of knowing. And I was wondering if I could just sidetrack a little bit because, with the image of the woman emerging from the sea with the seal, I'm also reminded of Venus and the Venusian archetype that is so closely related to the sacred feminine. And Neptune is often seen as the higher octave of Venus. And that's why I'm starting to see this link between women, the embodiment of our creative expression, and how it has a larger archetypal significance for the collective, for that transpersonal element. And I wonder if I could invite you to speak, to share a little bit more about your perspective on why it is so important for women in particular to step into that higher creative expression, to really activate their inner fire and to start to express, to speak up more, to stand more fully in the embodiment of their creativity.
Well, I think that image is so powerful because it is about the importance of our also coming out of that sea. And I think part of what Dane Rudhyar saw with that is that that's also coming out of the depths of our emotions, our deeper unconscious, to move, to rise above the surface, to see things more consciously, which I think is part of what we're being called to in this time. And we're all being called to reclaim that sacred feminine wisdom and energy. We all have the sacred masculine and sacred feminine within us. So I think it's being activated in all of us, women and men. But I do believe, and many spiritual teachers talk about this, that as we're in this critical transition time, we women need to be the role models and guides of how to step back into that sacred feminine wisdom and creativity and right brain ways of knowing, to be pioneers, leaders of how we can move into these new ways of seeing and being and manifesting our creativity. So I think it's very important for us as women to really honor what is our own unique creative expression in this time. And how do we tune into that and allow ourselves to express that and manifest that? And part of what's so powerful in what you're saying about Neptune being the higher octave of Venus, Venus is that expression of beauty in the context of relationship, in the context of that expression of love. And Neptune, being the higher octave of Venus, is how are we then expressing that creativity as a way of expressing our awareness of the love of the cosmos, and how we are each a fractal expression of that cosmic consciousness with our own unique creative expression. And if we don't bring that forth, that's never a part of the creativity of the cosmos manifesting itself through us. So I think it's so important to honor our own unique expression of our creative energy.
Thank you for clarifying and making it really clear that we're not saying that this is only about women expressing themselves, that all of us as human beings have carry both the sacred masculine and the sacred feminine. My understanding is that given the kind of toxic patriarchal systems that humanity as a society has been under, it's become increasingly important for women to heal those, you've alluded to some of those feminine woundings. I'm thinking envy, competition, comparison. A lot of the times, especially with the shadow side of Venus, because it is so relational, we look at what another woman has that we perhaps deeply desire, but do not feel that we have permission to express. And when I talk about the shadow, I'm also referring to the golden shadow here, where we adulate and we worship certain, like I'm talking about celebrity. I'm thinking about celebrity culture here, which is, to me, a skewed expression of Neptune, with all the glamour and film culture and all of that. And then we devalue the gifts that we hold as well. We see it as in another person, in other women, but not in ourselves. And time again, I've seen so many women, they disappoint themselves at the end of the day because they don't feel that they have that ability to arrive at a more authentic, deeper place of genuine expression. On a personal level, it was interesting that prior to our recording, we were chatting about creative expression and how you like my background and all of that. And it's funny because for the longest time, I didn't dare to express myself in that physical way because I was afraid of projections from other women. I was really thin when I was in my younger years, and I was not happy being thin because I could feel into some of the negative comparisons that some of my friends would have. For instance, I had friends who were constantly watching their weight because the societal standard of beauty was to be thin, and I felt that I had done nothing to deserve this. I didn't go on a diet. In fact, I felt that I was so malnourished, and that was why I was skinny. And I was actually really trying hard to put on weight, and I couldn't. But there was a part of me that shrunk and became small and didn't dare to express myself because of these, fears of comparison and competition, and therefore wanting to hide. And this summit, it's all about taking up space and feeling that all of us, that we as a collective, right, and as individuals, we have that ability to shine our light without fear of other people's judgments, etc. So this is where I feel that the movement of Neptune into Aries provides some inspiration for women who are desiring to individuate and come into a fuller expression of their unique gifts. So how do you feel that this movement of Neptune into Aries can help and support women, especially those who are sensitive, to step into and activate more of their creative gifts?
This is such a deep topic, I think, that you're touching on in terms of some of these ways in which we as women have internalized that insecurity or anxiety about stepping into our gifts, or so many of us carry fears. I had to work through this very intense anxiety about being visible in the world for fear of being attacked. And I think it's both what can play out in dynamics between us in relationship, but I also think that many of us have had past life experiences of feeling persecuted within the patriarchal culture by trying as women to step out with our gifts and our strengths and our creativity. So I think we all can hold that fear that constricts us and can bind us. And I think one of the meanings of Neptune's movement into Aries is it's dissolving the out of balanced energies of the age of Aries, which is when we moved into the patriarchal period, and that power over paradigm that began to distort all of us, men and women, but has been so destructive to the full expression of the sacred feminine in particular, and to us as women in claiming our full creativity and empowerment. And I think that part of what you're talking about that can play out between us as women with envy or jealousy or projections is, that myth of Inanna that came right at the cusp of the end of the age of Taurus, as we moved into the age of Aries in the patriarchal period, is about the dynamic between Inanna, queen of heaven, Venus as the evening star, and her sister Ereshkigal, who was formerly the great grain goddess, but she was raped, abused, and banished. She is so symbolic of the devaluation and persecution of sacred feminine energy. So she ends up being the queen of feels invisible, unseen, not affirmed, not valued, not able to be in her full expression. And I think all of us as women carry some of those wounds. And Inanna in the story goes to the underworld to reconnect with her sister. And Ereshkigal doesn't greet her with joy and give her a hug and say, I'm so glad to reunite with you. She lashes out at her in rage. And I think we as women have internalized those wounds of the patriarchal period and then take out that anger or envy on each other. And I think Neptune in Aries is saying, release, dissolve those out of balanced patterns. I think Chiron in Aries is heal those Aries wounds, heal your sense of self, to reclaim the fullness of who you are. Chiron is in Aries, right next to that wonderful dwarf planet, Eris Xena, who is so symbolic of how we as women can be empowered in ourselves to step off the conventional path and follow our own unique creative path. So these energies in Aries are healing those out of balanced energies of the age of Aries, are guiding us back into a more healed, whole sense of ourselves so that we can reclaim our own unique creative expression and dare to step out and be visible in the world. And I think with Neptune in Aries, and we now have Saturn moving into Aries May 25th. So then Saturn is supporting our taking in that energy of Neptune, reclaiming our creativity, that mystical awareness of our oneness with all that is. And Saturn then says, now put it into form. Now manifest it. So I think that combination is so powerfully helping us to dissolve what we need to release, to reclaim our creativity, our awareness that we're each an expression of the creativity of cosmic consciousness, and then be able to put it into form.
So many beautiful pieces here, Heather. Let me try and make some connections here. First off, I want to tie this back to a point you made earlier when we were talking about Venus, and how it's relational, and how the gift is to go deeper into our emotions, especially the uncomfortable emotions like envy or even sacred rage. When you brought up the story of Ereshkigal, right? There is so much anger at the unfairness and the injustice and the projection onto her own sister, right? That piece is I feel it's really important. And it wasn't until I did the shadow work and I was able to express my envy and to say it out loud, to give expression to it and be witnessed in sacred circle, and to not feel that I was being shamed or that there was anything wrong with that, to feel that it was actually a very real and human part of me. And to be able to process and move through those emotions, that was what enabled me to heal those insecurities and those wounds that I had carried on a personal level. So I feel that that piece is really important. And I think the work that you do and the communities that you have in the increasing number of women's circles that are out there that facilitate and hold space for women to process emotions that are not deemed acceptable in mainstream culture. That piece is so crucial to the healing of our collective. That to me is, the dissolution, the melting away, the softening into, because I think so many women, we have these armors around our hearts to protect ourselves or when we get really defensive. So when you brought in that piece around Neptunian dissolving, I thought that yes, even the tears, right, the softening that comes is so important in order for us to then heal and step up. And then the other piece I wanted to bring, because in your talk about Neptune and Aries, well, there are 3 fire signs, right? We have Aries, and then we move on to Leo and Sagittarius. And when you brought up Saturn, so I see Saturn as the traditional ruler of Aquarius. And now Pluto has moved into Aquarius. So could you speak more into this piece around Leo being the polarity of Aquarius and how Leo can support us in the expression of healthy, individual, self-led creativity? How can we ride on the energies of now Saturn moving into Aries, right next to Neptune, and then we also have Pluto in Aquarius, where Saturn is the traditional ruler of. Can you say a little bit more into that?
Well, what you're describing is we have 3 fire signs, and they're all important in terms of connecting to our spirituality and our creativity. And Aries allows us to find that spark of new beginnings and to take initiative, to dare to take risks, to step out in new ways. But it is very significant that we're moving into the age of Aquarius, and each age astrologically is always integrating the sign opposite. So the age of Aquarius is about how do we co-create this new world together through collaboration and co-creation. How do we come back into truth and balance and harmony and justice and beauty? Leo, opposite Aquarius, is guiding us to each look at how do we find that light and creative fire within us to be in our own unique expression of these new paradigms that we're moving into. The beauty of the Aquarian age, even though it is about community and collaboration, it's about honoring the diversity within our global community, within our groups and our collaboration with each other, so that Leo becomes how do I honor my own sovereignty of self and unique creative expression to bring that out in service to others as my contribution to the community. So I think that's really critical. And then Sagittarius is the sign that is associated with its ruler Jupiter, which is very much about both right brain ways of thinking and knowing. But Sagittarius is also the constellation that has the image of the archer with the bow and arrow, with the tip of the arrow pointing exactly at our galactic center. So Sagittarius, that fire is how do we honor that we're on a spiritual path and keep our gaze on source, the galactic center, to guide us in how then we can honor those fires of cosmic consciousness within us that then find our unique expression, Leo, and our willingness to act on that and step out with it in a visible way, Aries. And what's interesting about, and I love that you chose this focus on cosmic fire and creative fires, because we're in this time of the solar maximum, 2025, where we're getting activated by all these energies from the sun. Interestingly enough, as we're now moving out of the Kali Yuga, the time of forgetting, the time of suppressing our sacred feminine energy and creativity, the galactic center has reactivated and is sending these pulsating energies and light to us. So the fires of the galactic center, the fires of the sun, are activating our inner fire to support us in tuning into our own creative fires and daring to express them and bring them out.
You know, I really love this piece that you shared around sovereign creative self-expression, because there is so much talk in the collective space around, oh, we're now in the age of Aquarius and everyone's going to be happy together. We're going to rise from the ground up, etc. But what you're saying here, and this is a really important piece, I feel, is that we need each individual to step up in his or her creative self-expression in full sovereignty. Only then can we have that higher frequency of the Aquarian age to be expressed. It actually does not serve and does not help for there to be a following, like a collective of people who are always looking for leaders or gurus or looking for someone out there to guide or to lead the way. It sounds like, you know, this diversity is a diversity of leaders, which to me is very different from some of the political systems that we're seeing today, which is very hierarchical. That to me is a reflection of the kind of toxic patriarchal system where there's a leader and there are followers and there's this imbalance. But what you're really speaking to here is that, oh, it's a diversity of leaders and we're all rising together. And therefore, as a collective, we get to evolve and create that change that we desire to see. Also very interesting that the sun, that Leo is ruled by the sun, and then you're highlighting that, okay, yeah, these solar flares, this period of time we're witnessing a lot of like solar flares, etc. Can you speak a little bit more into it and what you feel is happening to all of us, right, in our light bodies, for instance? How is all this solar energy enabling us to work with and grow as a collective?
It's just so important to realize that these energies coming to us from the sun, from the galactic center, are transforming us physically, emotionally, spiritually, energetically. They are calling us into more of the light of consciousness. I think, as you were saying earlier, this is a profound time for healing, for facing what's been in the shadows within ourselves and collectively. So these energies from the sun and the galactic center are helping us see what are the blocks that we need to clear. What's been hidden in the shadows? What ways have we been out of balance that have been blocking us from being in the truth of who we are? So those energies are guiding us to see ourselves more clearly, to heal, but then they're also activating our pineal glands. They're calling us more to move out of our minds back into our hearts. And it's through our heart that we connect to the soul self within us, that remembers that we're part of the oneness of all that is. That's how we actually can most effectively tap into our unique creative expression, because that creative expression ultimately is the emergence and expression of our soul self. Part of what's happened in the patriarchal period, as you said, is that we've gotten caught in these hierarchical dynamics that create this power over structure that causes us all to get caught in distortion and suppression and that lack of sovereignty of self that allows us to find who we each uniquely are. In the age of Aquarius, we are moving out of that power over dynamic into more of this collaborative sense of community that frees us each to have that chance to tune into what is my unique creative expression. And I do believe these energies coming from the sun and cosmos are activating us to tune into that, to then be able to express that, to be supporting the healing shifts on the planet.
Thank you. And just as a summing up of all things Leo here, you brought up the principle of the heart and how our soul self resides in the heart. Well, the heart corresponds with Leo. We think about the lion and courage, right? And how its root word is the heart. It's almost as if, when we can take in these solar energies to help us evolve our light bodies for one, right? Then we'll be able to activate more of their heart consciousness, which is so needed today. I'd like now to quickly move on to Sagittarius, and you mentioned the galactic center. I would love to hear you say a little bit more about that, especially for the women who are watching this who may be new and may not or they may not be familiar with this, with what the galactic center is. You mentioned it as source. Can you say a little bit more about that and what it means for us as a collective?
The galactic center really is literally, and I love this in terms of our tapping into sacred feminine wisdom. The galactic center, from our Earth perspective, is that dark rift in the Milky Way. It is the fertile womb of the great goddess who's given birth to all that is in the galaxy. So it is that energy of creative source that has given life to all that is in our galaxy. And it's such a model for us. And I think this is very significant for us as women, that our creativity comes from our hearts, but also from our second chakras, from our wombs, that we can remember our capacity to give birth not only to new life, but to give birth to any new expression of creativity. And the galactic center is also the center of our galaxy and is guiding us to find that center within ourselves, which is the heart chakra. That is where we not only connect to our own creativity, but it is through our heart that we connect to the unified field of all that is. And I think part of what we're moving into in this time, coming out of the Kali Yuga, moving into higher consciousness, is we are moving more and more into that remembrance that we can connect to that energy of source within us and tap into these other ways of knowing that guide us in being in the truth of who we are and our own creative expression.
I love how our conversation started out by looking at Aries, individual, the individual, the self, and now we've moved on to look at cosmic consciousness and how we have the ability to connect with and tap into that. Really beautiful how everything is, connecting and tying up here. At this point, I would love to invite you to take the space and guide us through a meditation to help us connect back with our soul self and to tap into our inner creative fire. So let me just invite you to take the space.
All right, so let's do that. Let's close our eyes and just begin to breathe in and out slowly and deeply. And allow yourself to feel your feet on the ground, connecting to Mother Earth. Allow yourself to visualize roots going from your earth, from your feet deep down into the earth. drawing in that energy of the earth to nurture you, heal you, ground you, support you. With your in-breath, draw that energy up into your body, letting it flow throughout every cell in your body. And now allow yourself to open your crown chakra. And with your in-breath, draw in the energy of the sun, the light and fire of the sun. Feel that coming into your body and illuminating you, clearing you, filling you with light. And now also allow yourself to go further out until you come to the galactic center, that source. Allow yourself to pull in the energy of the galactic center down through your crown chakra, filling your body with that wisdom and love of cosmic consciousness, filling you, surrounding you, supporting you. Feel how those different energies of the earth and of the sky, the sun and galactic center, are flowing through you and merging, and allow them to come together into unity at your heart. Tune in now as you continue to breathe in and out slowly and deeply. Visualize yourself breathing in and out of your heart. Allow yourself to feel your heart attuning to the energies and rhythms of the earth, and attuning to the energies and rhythms of the sky of cosmic consciousness. Feel how as you breathe in and out through your heart, you feel your heart expand. You feel that center within you, that place of peace and stillness. You feel how it is through your heart that you connect to your soul self. That part of you that is a part of infinity, that is a part of the oneness of all that is. As you breathe in and out of your heart and attune to your soul self and align with your soul self, that center within you, allow yourself to feel your own inner fire of wisdom, of creativity, your own fractal expression of cosmic consciousness that is your soul self. Let yourself attune to your soul self, to its unique song, its unique expression of creativity. Give yourself a moment to listen to that inner song of your soul self. What is your soul wanting to express? What unique creativity is wanting to emerge in you and move through you and be expressed in the world? Allow yourself to tune into that. And if no immediate message or awareness comes for you, allow yourself to honor that that soul self is in you, is always guiding you, is always supporting you in your more full expression of who you truly are, of your unique creativity. Allow yourself now to put your hand on your heart, honoring your heart, your soul self, honoring your connection to the earth and sky, honoring all the spirit guides and helpers who are supporting you in healing and transforming and stepping more and more fully into the uniqueness of who you are. And now draw in those roots from the earth, bringing those roots back up into your body. Allow yourself to gently close your crown chakra and keeping your energy focused on your heart. Give thanks to the earth and sky. Give thanks to your heart that connects you to the oneness of all that is. And gently, gradually, bring yourself back to this moment. And when you're ready, open your eyes.
Thank you, Heather. That was such an interesting one because I was feeling a lot of electricity coming through. So I'm going to take a little bit of creative license here and ask you a couple of alternative questions because, at the time that you have chosen to have this conversation with me, we are in such a special time. And, you mentioned earlier that 2025 is such a pivotal year. So many shifts happening. This is also the year when we're having the last Sun-Uranus conjunction in Taurus. And it's at this moment, it's also activating the Pleadian portal. And I was feeling a lot of that electricity, that very Uranian energy comes through during this meditation that you just led us through. And I remember that we had an earlier conversation where you mentioned that Uranus, you associated with Prometheus, the bringer of fire to man. And so I thought, oh, we were talking about the fire signs. We hadn't quite talked about this one. So I thought, oh, that's an interesting connection there. But also the Pleiades. On a personal note, I'm starting to connect on a much deeper level with the energies of the Pleiades, which to me is such a sacred, divine feminine energy, like the seven sisters. And how interesting is it that in so many cultures all around the world, there's mention of this cluster of stars. And since our conversation is around the idea of creative fire and around the sacred feminine, I wonder if you could share your perspective and share some thoughts on what's currently happening for us now. The Sun-Uranus conjunction, activating the Pleiadian portal. It's happening right now as we are chatting, but it will have an ongoing effect, I feel. In fact, I'm sure of it. But I just feel that something significant is being activated here, which I've been feeling into for the past couple of days, but also during the activation that you guided us through. So I just feel called to ask you for your thoughts on this.
I think it is so powerful that we have that Sun-Uranus conjunction activating or aligning us with the Pleiades. I do believe the Pleiadians are very advanced beings who are in balance with the sacred feminine and sacred masculine energies. I think they are guiding us in this profound transition time. And I do think it's very significant that as we're also moving towards this new moon, May 26th or 27th, depending on where you are on the globe, that we'll have this whole cluster of planets, Sun, Moon, Uranus, Mercury, all clustered around the Pleiades in the stars of Taurus. Even though they're in the sign of Gemini in the chart, they're actually in the stars of Taurus, which is about that remembrance of the wisdom of the age of Taurus, where all of life is sacred and we're meant to honor our own unique, creative, sacred expression. So I think this portal with the Pleiades is helping us to remember how to come back into harmony and balance within ourselves, how to reclaim that sacred feminine wisdom, and how to honor our own creative expression and honor that all of the life around us is a sacred expression of the creativity of cosmic consciousness. And we're a part of that.
Wow, I'm just feeling that in my heart. The activation that you guided us through really opened up our hearts, and just hearing you say all those words of beauty and truth. I'm reminded of that. It's a line from a poem by Keats, I believe, where the line goes along the truth is beauty and beauty is truth. And I was really sensing into that, coming into alignment. Yeah. So I'm a little bit.
Some of the amazing thing about reclaiming the sacred feminine wisdom is reclaiming beauty, and how that joy we can experience when we realize, and this is the sacred feminine wisdom, that everything is meant to be in right harmony, right balance with all that is. Then our unique soul's creative expression is our unique note in that orchestration of the song of the spheres and the harmony of the spheres and the joy of being in that beauty, in that creative expression of the cosmos. That's what we're moving towards.
Yes, the harmony. And I loved how you expressed it as how each of us have our unique song that is meant to be expressed creatively. And how it really is time. I'm hearing when you mentioned this orchestration, I had this vision of this diversity of women stepping up, singing their song with sovereignty, with confidence, with courage, and this collective uprising, like rising up, that is really very much in the collective space when I tune in. So how beautiful is it that all the astrological alignments are in place to help us with that? You know, throughout our conversation, you have highlighted a couple of cosmic events, the movement of Neptune into Aries, that conjunction with Saturn that's also supporting us in bringing structure to all of that. You've also moved through the signs, Aries, Leo, Sagittarius. And then you also brought out that piece around the galactic center. That one also feels quite special to me because, if I'm not wrong, I have Neptune conjunct my midheaven, conjunct the galactic center. And I think I shared this in a personal conversation with you, that I've been trying to tune into the galactic center and feel into what does it mean for me on a personal level. So it's just really interesting hearing your perspective on it. To me, it just feels so vast, so big. Sitting in the space and tuning into it, sometimes there really are no words. It just goes beyond the mind, as you say, and it goes right into the center of the soul, like right into the heart. Yeah. And the activation that you guided us through actually had carried a flavor of that. You're going to say something.
I love that in biogeometry, coming from Ibrahim Karim, who is an Egyptian who has integrated ancient temple science from ancient Egypt into modern architecture and modern science. But he talks about how that energy of the galactic center, that energy of the center of source, is literally in the center of all that is. So when we tune into our central chakra, our hearts, we're actually tapping into that energy of the galactic center. It's in us. So we don't have to contemplate it as something outside of us. That energy of source, of peace, of creativity, of love is in our hearts. And literally, the center of anything, any object, the center of the medicine wheel, carries that energy of source and radiates that energy of source, of love, of creativity. So once we begin to realize it's in us, it's all around us, then we can reclaim that sacredness of the life around us. And I think that supports us in reclaiming our own sovereignty of self and creative expression. And I want to circle back again to that incredible image of the 0 degrees of Aries. The woman rises out of the sea. We are reclaiming our sacred feminine wisdom and creativity. The seal rises up and embraces her. The energies of the earth, of nature, of the sky, as we step out with our creativity, dare to be visible, we're met by those energies of the cosmos, embracing us, supporting us, allowing us not to feel alone in that, but to know that we are stepping into our place in the oneness of all that is.
What you're saying here reminds me of also something that you highlighted earlier. The idea that we are all fractal expressions of the same, that ultimately we're all one. And so when we can tap into that source, that galactic center that you highlighted, what we're really activating is our own unique fractal expression that is ultimately in harmony with the oneness that is. Yeah. Oh, this has been such a beautiful and nourishing conversation, Heather. Thank you so much for being a part of all 3 of my summits. I just want to say a big thank you to you for that. And actually, now that I think about it, right, each and every one of your each and every one of our conversations, I see them as fractal expressions of the same thing, like the same theme that we have here, which is about supporting the rise of and the awakening of the sacred feminine. And each time was a different topic, but it all comes back to the same thing. So thank you, a big thank you once again. And to end off, I'd just like to share the free gift that you have for the audience who's watching this, which is an extended meditation to help us get centered in our hearts, to connect with our soul selves. So all you have to do if you're watching this is to click on the link below this video in order to access this beautiful, generous offering that Heather has for you. So before we end, Heather, I'm just wondering, are there any final words of inspiration that you'd like to share? You've shared some of your personal journey, your fears of stepping up, becoming more visible, and how over the years by the time I got to know you, you are so prominent and so visible. And you are definitely expressing your truth, your beauty, your creativity out in the world through the various platforms that you have. Having arrived at this at this part of your journey, are there any words of wisdom that you'd like to share with the women who are watching this?
I would just say this is such a powerful time, such an accelerated time of transition and transformation. And we're each being guided and supported in healing and stepping more and more into our true selves. And I think that it's exquisite that the energies of the earth and sky are supporting us in that. And that as we connect more and more with our hearts, part of what I've really learned and experienced across the years, as I live more and more from my heart and that alignment with my soul self, the angst of the ego kind of goes into the background. We less and less get caught in those personality fears about visibility or about projections from others. We're more and more in that inner peace and centeredness in our connection with our soul self. And then we're not afraid because our soul self is not afraid and is always in that alignment with source, with cosmic consciousness. So more and more, I think that's being activated for us to guide us into our own centered sense of self, our own alignment with our soul self, and our own creative expression.
Such a powerful piece of insight right there, Heather. I know for me personally, that is such a needed reminder. Oftentimes on my journey, when I do get sidetracked and I do get shaken and feel a little bit wobbly, just reminding myself that I can lean into that alignment with my soul self gets me back back in center with myself. And at the end of the day, it's really just a practice of coming back to center and aligning back to that again.
Well said.
So thank you once again, Heather, for being here with us and sharing your unique gifts, your unique expression, and your medicine with all of us. And a big thank you also to all of you who are watching this.